A manager noticed a quiet black man enter her store and immediately told him to leave. What she did not realize was that he was the owner of the entire company, and her career was about to come to an end in the break room. David Martin was indifferent to titles such as CEO, owner, or boss. None of those labels held much significance for him anymore, especially after everything it took to reach this point at 49 years old, with 2 decades of experience and plenty of hard-earned lessons. What really mattered to him now was how people behaved when they thought nobody was watching, how they treated others when they believed they held the advantage. That is why on a muggy Friday morning in the middle of August, David pulled into the parking lot of one of his latest store additions, Wilson & Birch, a home goods chain nestled inside a quiet shopping plaza just outside Roswell, Georgia. This was the kind of place where customers came looking for curtain rods, decorative pillows, or perhaps a few spice racks. He chose a faded spot at the edge of the lot, left his Mercedes at home, and stepped out dressed in jeans, worn Timberland boots, and a simple gray t-shirt, without a watch or assistant. It was just him and the gentle buzz of early morning traffic. The store had been part of a family-operated franchise for years before David purchased it, along with half a dozen more earlier that summer. The deal closed quickly since the brand needed fresh guidance, and David recognized its promise. However, buying the business on paper was only the beginning. Understanding the real atmosphere inside required time. Time spent walking in unannounced, without a prior warning to the manager or a memo proclaiming, "The CEO is coming." Entering like any other customer, he inhaled deeply, before pushing open the glass door. The small bell above tumbled softly, announcing his arrival. Inside, the air carried a fragrance of lavender sachets mixed with lemon-scented floor cleaner. Gentle background music came from a speaker tucked in the corner. The shelves were neat, lined with picture frames and hand towels. David lingered by a display of decorative rugs, observing the lone cashier as she conversed with a middle-aged couple near the register. Then his eyes landed on her, a white woman appearing to be in her early 50s. Her short red-blonde bob framed a composed face, dressed in a sharp navy blouse neatly tucked into black slacks. She approached with a clipboard, carrying the demeanor of someone who had urgent matters elsewhere. "Can I assist you with something?" she asked, quickly scanning him and then diverting her gaze just as fast. "No, just looking around," David replied nonchalantly, but she did not move aside. "Well, if you are not intending to purchase anything, I will need you to step away from the entrance," she insisted. He blinked in surprise. The woman straightened her posture and repeated firmly, "Excuse me, if you are not here to shop, you cannot loiter. It's store policy." David maintained a light tone, puzzled whether inspecting rugs qualified as idling. "Sir," she said sharply, glancing around as if embarrassed by the discussion's public nature, "I have had issues at this location before. I cannot allow customers to linger without purpose." David studied her with calm curiosity and asked if she treated every visitor this way. "I am just doing my job," she snapped, her defensiveness growing with every word. "We have to maintain a professional environment here." A soft voice came from behind the counter saying, "I do not appreciate you, Karen." Both turned to see a young woman with short braids, perhaps in her early 20s, standing at the register. Her name tag said Mia Parker. Karen sighed and said, "What, Mia?" Mia did not reply immediately. Instead, she gazed at David, then back at Karen, and then again at David. That name, that face. She had seen them before in the onboarding documents. David gave her a slight nod. Mia's eyes widened just a bit, saying nothing. Karen faced David again, now clearly irritated, and said, "Look, I do not want any trouble. But I will have to ask you." He gently interrupted. "You are the manager here." "Right, I am," she replied firmly. "Karen, read." David reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small folded company document. It was the kind only high-ranking executives received. Without speaking, he held it out. Karen took it, unfolded it, and read the first line. Her lips twitched, and her eyes narrowed as she reread it. "David Martin," she whispered, "CEO." He nodded once. Her face drained of color, but everyone else in the room had yet to process it. The full impact had yet to be felt. Karen Reed stood still, the paper in her hand feeling as if it were burning. Her fingers instinctively curled the edges, as though she could crush the truth away. Her eyes flickered from David to the words in front of her. He remained in the same jeans, plain t-shirt, and calm gaze. "Is this real?" she asked, her voice softer, losing its edge. "Yes, ma'am," came the quiet answer. He spoke politely, yet with a distant tone. "I manage this shop along with 6 other locations." Karen blinked quickly. "I had no idea. Nobody informed me you were coming." David smiled, though his eyes lacked warmth, which was exactly the point. Nearby, Mia stood still as another employee, a tall man with light skin in his 30s, emerged from the stockroom and observed silently. The atmosphere inside the shop had changed. Even without words, it wasn't fear, but a recognition that something was off, and that it was already beyond repair. With a forced grin, Karen forced herself to respond. "I didn't mean to offend you, Mr. Martin. Honestly, I did not recognize you. And with all the recent incidents of people entering and stealing, you can understand why I assumed the worst," David asked calmly. Karen pressed her lips firmly together. "We have had problems lately, so I was just being careful." He tilted his head slightly. "Is that the term you use?" Karen's jaw tightened a bit. "I wasn't profiling, if that's what you're implying." "I never said you were," he replied after a pause. "But you just said it yourself." A heavy silence hung between them. Karen appeared to gather herself and said, "Look, I'm sure you understand how demanding retail work can be. We get a variety of customers here. I was trying to safeguard the store's interests." "I am the store's interests," David whispered without anger in his voice, which only made it more unnerving. He folded the paper and slid it back into his pocket, then moved away from the rug display. Without any fuss or drama, he walked slowly towards the rear of the store. Karen did not react immediately, but after standing frozen for a few seconds, as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet, she spun around quickly and made her way behind the counter. "Mia," she whispered sharply, "why didn't you tell me earlier?" Mia looked down, uncertain. "I wasn't sure if I should. I did not want to embarrass you." "Embarrass me?" Karen scoffed, grabbing the phone from its cradle. "This situation is already a disaster. I need to contact Reginald right away to get ahead of this." "You might want to put that down," came the voice of David Martin from behind her. She turned to find him leaning casually against the doorway leading to the employee area. "I already called them," he said. Karen's mouth opened and closed in surprise. "You already called?" "Yes, even before I walked in," David replied. "I wanted to check if what they are saying on the floor matches the reports I've been getting from Human Resources." "And what exactly have you been hearing?" she asked, although it seemed she already had an idea. Morale is low, turnover is high, and some staff members feel uneasy about speaking up. He looked at Mia. I think I just understand why now. Karen's expression grew stern. Mr. Martin, with all due respect, I have managed this location for 6 years. I have kept losses under control, met sales goals, and held this team together despite staff shortages and supply chain problems. I do not believe one misunderstanding. This is not about sales, David interrupted gently. It is about how people are treated, whether they are customers, employees, or anyone who enters through that door. She straightened her posture and said firmly, I treat everyone fairly. No. Treating everyone the same was assumed to mean fairness. David Martin let those words linger. They do not always line up, he added quietly. Behind her, the tall man from the stockroom looked away. Mia Parker's eyes were glossy, her lips pressed together nervously. No one wanted to break the silence loudly. Karen Reed folded her arms across her chest, asking, So what happens now? David glanced at the wall clock. Regional management is sending someone. They should arrive within the next hour to assess me, to assess the store, he explained. Then, after a moment of hesitation, but yes, you are involved in this as well. Karen expelled a breath sharply and turned aside, biting her tongue. For once, she did not claim the final word. But her staff's silence revealed far more than she ever could. Karen remained stationed at the front of the store, standing stiffly beside the counter. She pretended to busy herself with receipts and notes on a clipboard, though her hands frequently stopped, trembling slightly. Every so often, she glanced toward the back hallway where David had vanished. Meanwhile, the store itself held an unusual quiet. Customers continued to filter in, unaware of the growing tension lurking among the displays of scented candles and ceramic bowls. Yet the employees sensed the heaviness in the atmosphere. Mia stayed near the register, her eyes shifting rapidly between her screen and the others around her. She seemed as if she wanted to speak up, to maybe offer an apology, but she could not find the right instant to do so. Nolan Frey from the stockroom leaned casually against a support pillar close to aisle 4. He had worked at Wilson and Birch for 3 years, reserved, reliable, and steady. He was not the type to indulge in gossip, yet this situation made you question who you had been working for all this time. Karen suddenly stepped forward and sharply said, Nolan, why do you not go and straighten the bedding aisle? He blinked in surprise and replied, It is already clean. She snapped back, Then double-check it and do not just stand there doing nothing. Mia flinched. A customer just under a meter away glanced up from a stack of table runners. Nolan remained still. Karen, he is still here. Are you really sure this is how you want to behave right now? She hesitated. Her lips parted briefly before closing again. She turned back toward the register and began rearranging the gift cards. Despite them already being perfectly neat, Mia took a shallow breath and stepped out from behind the counter. Her hands shook slightly as she walked toward the back, where she found David standing in the small lighting section. He was examining a shelf of desk lamps and did not look up when he heard her approach. Mr. Martin, she said softly. He glanced at her sideways and said, Just call me David, all right? She paused and added, I just wanted to say I recognized you immediately. I just did not know what to do. He nodded and replied, You did the right thing. She murmured, I did not really do anything. I should have spoken up sooner. But I was afraid. That is the first step that most people miss, he said, turning fully to face her. You did not offer any excuses, and that makes a difference. Mia let his words sink in. She can be harsh sometimes, Karen. I do not think she realizes how she sounds. She knows, he said calmly. She has simply grown accustomed to no one correcting her. Mia glanced downward. Some individuals here have resigned without even saying farewell. I once believed perhaps they found superior jobs. Now, I am less certain. David's expression remained unchanged, yet his silence felt heavy. He gazed beyond her briefly, then asked, "Tell me something. If you were in charge here, what changes would you make?" She blinked me. "Yes, you work here. You understand what it is like. What would you improve?" Mia looked around. "I would stop treating everyone as just a number. Karen belittles people. She acts as if joking, but truly means it, and constantly makes us feel insignificant, as if we should be grateful simply to be here. You believe people perform better when they sense they do not matter?" "No," Mia replied quickly. "I believe folks put in more effort when they feel recognized." David smiled, not widely, just enough to show he acknowledged her words. They were interrupted by approaching footsteps. Karen again. She appeared suddenly, holding a clipboard. "There you are," she said, pretending cheerfulness, "just checking in. How is everything back here?" "Fine," David stated plainly. Karen glanced at Mia. "Thank you, Mia. I will handle this now." Mia paused. David raised his hand gently. "She is fine." Karen disliked that, but maintained a sweet tone, certainly just trying to help. He stepped closer. "Karen, I need you to do something." "Certainly, go wait in the break room," she blinked. "Excuse me. You have already made enough choices today, so let's take a moment before making any further decisions." She opened her mouth to protest, but then saw Mia and Nolan both focused on a customer near aisle 5. Without saying another word, Karen turned away and left. Not because she agreed, but because she simply did not know what else to do. Karen Reed sat alone inside the break room. The plastic clock on the wall ticked loudly enough to make her ears itch. She kept tapping the tip of her pen against the clipboard, trying to appear busy, trying to focus on anything other than the words she had just heard. "Go wait in the break room," spoken by a man she had just attempted to remove from the store. Over and over she replayed the moment in her mind, her own voice sounding harsher with each replay. The tone, the judgments, and that very tone, the same one she had used on him, was what everyone would remember. It did not make sense to her because she had been in retail for more than 20 years, managed this location for 6, maintained steady sales, kept losses low, and showed up 6 days a week. Did all of that not matter? Yet none of it could undo what had already occurred. Meanwhile, on the sales floor, David Martin was not pacing or shouting. He was calmly doing what he had come to do: watch and observe. Walking through the aisles with a notepad in hand, he began asking the team questions about scheduling, training procedures, and whether employees felt safe enough to speak their minds. Nolan was truthful with him. "I have seen Karen make people cry, but never in front of customers. Yet once the door closes behind that break room, she changes completely. I've been here long enough to recognize what I can ignore and what I must avoid." David nodded slowly. "Has anyone ever filed a complaint against her?" "Some tried, but nothing came of it." He hesitated, and then added that those complaints were just dropped. Meanwhile, Mia stood nearby, assisting a customer choosing drawer organizers, though her gaze remained fixed on David. Not out of fear, but admiration. She had heard about leaders like him, watched interviews, and followed stories on the news about those who rose from nothing, yet still remembered their roots. He reminded her of her uncle, quiet, intelligent, and speaking only when necessary. Soon the front doors opened, and a tall woman wearing a blue blazer entered with determination. Carrying a black leather tote, she scanned the room, spotted David, and approached directly. "Lena Mayfield, Regional Director," she said, shaking his hand. "Are you all right?" "Yes," he replied. "Thanks for coming on such short notice. I was already halfway here for the Smyrna location." She lowered her voice and asked if he preferred to discuss this privately or in the break room. David answered plainly, and she nodded. The two proceeded toward the back. When Karen noticed Lena come in, her eyes flickered between them anxiously. She quickly stood up. "Miss Mayfield, I had no idea he was the owner. I would have handled everything differently if I had known," she said. Lena raised her hand, interrupting. "Karen, we are not here to listen to excuses." Karen slumped back into the chair. David Martin stood still with his arms relaxed by his sides. Karen Reed set her tote down and pulled out a slim folder. "There have been multiple complaints about this branch, ranging from poor communication to discriminatory behavior. I have personally reviewed some of them, and until today, there was no clear proof linking these accusations directly to you." Karen opened her mouth to speak, but closed it without a word. She then turned a page and continued. "This morning changed everything. You turned your back on your supervisor and made harsh judgments based solely on his appearance. What makes it worse is that you voiced these opinions loudly in front of both staff and customers." "I thought he was—" Karen started. "That's the problem," David interrupted calmly as he took a step closer. "You assumed, but you never asked. This is not just about me being the owner. It's about the way you treat others when you believe they are beneath you." Karen looked as if she wanted to disappear. Karen slid a document across the table. "Your resignation. You can sign it now and leave quietly today, or we proceed with termination." Karen stared at the paper and whispered, "After everything I have done for this store." David bent slightly and said quietly, "Sometimes it's not what you do, but how you do it that speaks the loudest." Flushed, Karen silently took the pen, signed the form, and handed it back. Karen stood up and said, "We will escort you out in 5 minutes." David remained in place as Karen left quietly, accompanied by an assistant. No fanfare, no drama, just the soft sound of her shoes on the tile. Yet, her absence echoed louder than any apology she might have made. The break room door closed behind Karen. With a gentle click, silence lingered for a whole 5 seconds as the room held its breath. The weight of the recent events echoed in the stillness. The accusations, the quiet aftermath, and the belated acceptance. Lena exhaled deeply and glanced at David Martin. "You managed that well," she said, lifting her tote onto her shoulder. "No yelling, no intimidation, just honesty." David replied, "That was my intention. To witness the truth personally." "You saw it," Lena acknowledged with a single nod. "And so did they." She then offered a brief farewell to the staff on the floor and left promptly. David did not follow immediately. He lingered in the break room for a few moments longer. The chairs were cheap plastic, the bulletin board was cluttered with flyers that had been up for months, and the coffee machine wheezed from the corner as if it were about to give up. He glanced around and realized that this was likely where Karen Reed had quietly humiliated employees off the sales floor, behind closed doors where no one could defend themselves. But that was no longer the case. He stepped out to the front, where Mia Parker was behind the register, sorting receipts. Nolan was adjusting a shelf display filled with candles, unfocused. Angela Tochi, another part-timer, wiped the same countertop twice, clearly avoiding eye contact. David clapped his hands softly to catch their attention. 3 pairs of eyes met his gaze. "I want to speak with all of you," he said. They gathered near the cash register, forming a small, uneven, and hesitant circle. "I realized today was uncomfortable," he began. "But this was necessary." Mia nodded slowly, and Nolan crossed his arms. "To be clear," David Martin continued, "Karen Reed did not lose her job because she had an off day, or because she said one wrong thing. She lost it because that behavior was not new. And it was unacceptable, not in this store, and not in any store bearing my name on the documents." Nolan spoke up. "We have seen her drive away 3 new hires over the past 2 months. One left in tears and never even collected her final paycheck." Angela added she used to mock people's accents, claimed it was just joking, but nobody found it funny. Mia Parker remained silent. She only looked down at the floor. David turned to her. "Mia, you were the only one today who spoke with your eyes before your words that told me everything." She slowly looked up. "I was not sure if it was my place," she whispered. He nodded. "Let me make it your place." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "Effective immediately," he said. "You are the new lead cashier. I am putting your name on the list for assistant manager training. This does not mean favoritism. It means I notice someone who watches carefully before speaking. That is leadership." Mia's eyes grew wide. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. "Thank you," she said quietly, still in shock. "You earned it," said David simply. Angela smiled gently. Nolan gave a small nod of approval. David clapped his hands once. "Now the rest of you, no one is getting fired, but we will be handling things differently. Starting today, there will be a suggestion box, anonymous, and you will all receive a survey from HR with no names attached. Say whatever you need to say." "I cannot fix what I am unaware of." Nolan raised his hand and asked if they could discuss overtime policies. "Let's get it in writing. We will begin there." David Martin looked at everyone once more. "I am not a hero, nor am I flawless, but I refuse to let silence become the rule." They stood silently without applause or cheer, united in quiet understanding. None of them anticipated feeling this way. That day, Mia Parker finally inquired, "Will you be visiting other stores like this as well?" "I already have," David answered. "And I will again, without notice or clipboards, just walking in." Mia gave a small but genuine smile. Karen Reed stepped forward. "Are you staying for the rest of the day?" "Not as your manager," David said, "but I will help stock the throw pillows if you need it." Some laughter eased the tension. For the first time all day, the atmosphere in the store felt lighter. Yet David was not finished. He had one more heartfelt message to share. An hour later, the atmosphere inside Wilson and Birch had transformed, as if a window long sealed had been flung open. The staff still moved cautiously, but not from fear. Instead, it was like they were finally inhaling fresh air. David remained. He did not hide away in an office, nor did he wander the aisles pretending to be important. Instead, he grabbed a box cutter, unpacked items in the back, and assisted Nolan in rearranging a seasonal glassware display that Karen always insisted be positioned perfectly. Nolan chuckled as he observed David restack the tumblers. "You know you are not bad at this. I have done worse for less," David replied. When I was 19, I was sliding a box to the side while stocking forklifts at a warehouse in Decatur. There was no air conditioning back then, no music playing, just the relentless heat and the cold concrete beneath us. Nolan muttered, "I bet no one tried to kick you out of there." And David raised an eyebrow in response. "You would be surprised," he said. "I wore a uniform, and yet people still asked if I was lost." They both shared a brief laugh, not because it was amusing, but because the truth was undeniable. Near the counter, Mia was assisting an elderly woman with her purchase. Her voice sounded calm and professional, but she was no longer glancing nervously over her shoulder or shrinking away behind the register like she had that morning. Angela returned from lunch carrying 2 sweet teas and silently handed one to David. He accepted it with a simple nod, which was enough gratitude for her. By mid-afternoon, the store felt like it belonged to them again. Once the business had slowed down, David gathered everyone near the front of the store. A few regular customers were browsing quietly in the background, but the atmosphere was calm enough for an important conversation. He looked at the faces before him, young and old, black and white, exhausted yet hopeful. "I want to say something before I leave," he began, "and I want to make it clear." Mia leaned on the counter. Nolan crossed his arms again, but this time without tension. "When I bought this chain, I didn't aim to change everything. I wanted to preserve what worked and improve what didn't. I believe in second chances, in people making mistakes, but I don't believe in pretending that everything is fine. Just because something has been happening for a long time." David Martin paused to let his words sink in before he went on. "Respect is not merely a polite gesture, it is a fundamental requirement. It is the cost of being part of this workplace. If someone cannot offer it, they simply do not belong here. It makes no difference whether they have been around for 6 weeks or 6 years." Karen Reed spoke quietly. "Many of us have just kept silent." "I understand that," David replied, "and I see the reason behind it, but staying silent allows the wrong individuals to take root. Eventually, they suffocate all that is good." Then he turned to Mia Parker. "You mentioned earlier that people tend to work harder when they feel acknowledged." She appeared somewhat surprised that he recalled that. "Yes, you were right. People do not require bonuses to remain loyal. They need respect. They need to feel that their opinions count." Karen nodded in agreement while Nolan rubbed the back of his neck, visibly absorbing the message. David continued, "From next month, every worker will have a private one-on-one meeting with human resources outside of working hours with no managers present. Just your voice, what is going well, what needs improvement. It is long overdue." Mia gave a faint smile. "That sounds fair." "No," David responded. "That sounds just." As the automatic doors swung open behind them, a family stepped inside, discussing what shade of curtains to choose. The routine of work resumed. Normal returned, but it was not the same as before. David stepped back, putting his truck keys into his back pocket. "I will be back," he said. "Not with a suit or a speech, just to check something." Nolan replied, "Sure, have you ever felt exhausted from repairing places that should have been functioning better without your intervention?" David Martin took a moment every single day. So why continue doing it? Because he remembered how it felt when nobody did. What lingered most with them was not the response itself, but the manner in which he delivered it, as if there had never been any doubt at all. The news spread quickly, not due to a mass email or some corporate announcement. Instead, it circulated because people talked, not only inside the Wilson and Birch Roswell store, but throughout the other 6 branches David managed. A former colleague messaged a friend, That friend informed their cousin working at the Lithonia store. By the end of the week, even the janitor at the Macon branch had caught the story. "Did you hear what happened to the manager in Roswell?" The CEO walked in looking like a customer. She tried to kick him out and was fired before her next break. No shouting, no threats, just resolved. What kept getting echoed, whispered in break rooms, recalled on the drive home, and mentioned during lunch was that phrase. The sentence David had said casually as he left, as if it cost him nothing. Respect has to be practiced every day. If you cannot show it, you cannot work here. It stayed with them, not because it was dramatic or accompanied by fanfare, but because it expressed a truth everyone acknowledged. No one had ever spoken it so plainly before. For Mia Parker, that moment meant more than simply a new job title. It was the first time she truly sensed her voice carried value, not just because she spoke up, but because someone heard her. The lead cashier badge given to her was more than just a plastic rectangle. It symbolized something important. It showed she had earned the right to influence how people were treated. Nolan remained on the team and trained 2 new employees that month. He made sure they understood how to lift heavy boxes properly and how to carry their dignity without allowing anyone to diminish it. Angela returned to part-time hours, but said she finally felt she was not merely clocking in. She belonged to a team, not a silent workforce. David Martin never mentioned the visit to Roswell on his social media. No motivational posts, no humble boasts. He continued quietly with his usual routine, entering his stores without fanfare, speaking directly to staff and correcting what needed adjustment without showmanship. He understood better than anyone that leadership does not depend on how loudly you speak, but on what others say about you when you are not present. A few weeks later, when he stopped by the Smyrna store wearing the same jeans and t-shirt, someone opened the door for him before he could even reach it. "Mr. Martin," the young employee said while holding the door. "Welcome back." David smiled and replied, "You know who I am." The young worker beamed. "We all do now." It was no longer just a story. It had become the standard, altering the atmosphere in every room it entered. Managers began to reconsider their actions before reacting, and employees stood with greater confidence. The culture did not change overnight, but it shifted just enough to make a difference. All because one individual refused to allow assumptions to overshadow the truth, all because he held a belief. Respect was not something granted only after someone deserved it, but something given because they were human from the very beginning. This was not a tale about a dismissal, nor an unexpected visit. It was about a moment when someone could have let things slide but chose not to. When a man in authority could have crushed another but decided to teach instead. And the impact of that choice spread farther than he could ever witness for every time the story was shared. People were not just speaking about David Martin. They were reminding themselves of what they truly deserved, and what they no longer needed to tolerate. If this story made you stop and think about your own job, your own management, or even your own silence, then pass it along. Let someone else hear it. Because respect does not begin with a set of rules. It begins with people subscribe for more. Authentic stories that leave a lasting impression long after they are finished.